This segment is brought to you by Jigmaster Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com and use promo code PNF20 and save 20% off your next jig order today.
Welcome to the Bass, Kayak, and Beers segment on the Paddle and Fin Network. It's your host Armando Solan, and on this segment we kick back with a special guest and talk about life, kayak fishing, and the pursuit of big bass. So get your cold brews on and enjoy the show. Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, to the Bass, Kayak, and Beer segment on the Paddle and Fin podcast, presented by Douglas Rods. Go to douglasoutdoors.com to check the full lineup of LRS rods, X-Matrix rods, and also great fly fishing rods. Award-winning fly fishing rods, I should say. So with me today is a gentleman that not only has the utmost respect in the kayak fishing community for what he's done on the water, but also what he's done out of the water. I'm super honored to bring you today, Mr. Brad Case. Mr. Case, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Enjoy being here.
Thank you. It's an honor, like I said, to have you on last minute cancellation. And thank you to Dan. Shout out to Dan Perry for getting us in contact and having you on again. I'm a long admirer of what you've done in the kayak fishing community, and like we talked about, you also have a decorated military service and also work as a firefighter. So you've served both the community and the country, and obviously we all have gratitude to what you've done. And we were just talking on the pre-recording about a few of the experience you had in the outtakes that you have that has brought you in life. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about how this year went for you as far as the kayak fishing tournament and what you got looking forward for next year. How's that?
Sound good? Sounds great.
Thank you. So, Mr. Brad, let's start with you. Let's talk a little bit about how what you do other than kayak fishing and how you eventually got into kayak fishing.
Well, I did 33 years military, Purple Heart on 04. Went several years before I figured out broken back and all the other injuries from that. And we, as military, worked great together. But once we all started getting out, we started finding problems because our camaraderie was gone. We didn't have anybody. So I met Chad Hoover down at one of the Bassmasters in New Orleans. And my wife told me, she says, y'all talk pretty good together. And she said, you need to get a kayak and get fishing like that. I used to use a little old 12-foot aluminum boat and fish that way by myself in the front. I said, well, yeah, you're right. A kayak won't be much different. And I started out with a cheaper kayak. Some people say, go ahead and start with the big one. Okay, well, I understand where people come from, not wanting to. So I started out with a Pelican Castaway 110, which was their pro model at the time period, but you better only set the hook from like 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. If you tried anything else, you're probably going to flip your kayak. And so this is learning experience, and it eventually got me to start upgrading with a win here and a win there on some tournaments. And I went to the wilderness side, and then from there it just blossomed. And once I started, I realized that helped me. I didn't have to worry about the camaraderie of my military friends much anymore, even though I helped a lot of fellow wounded veterans get them on the water throughout the years, and I still do, and fish with them. And then whenever they get tired, we come in. It's just something I like doing. But my camaraderie is with all my kayakers, be it whether they're a wounded veteran or just a stable guy that's just come off a workforce one afternoon and he wants to go fishing. And just like the podcast here, all the fellow kayakers that are listening, just being with y'all, it makes a lot of difference. Well, I don't care whether I'm winning or not. I just enjoy fishing. So, and that helps out a lot.
Definitely. And we were just talking about that off air that, we get so many of my guests have that military background, and they always say one of the things that gravitated into the sport is that calming effect that has helped them get back to a civilian life, which is, again, not always easy. being that you've seen and maybe lived through some horrors that we in the civilian life haven't had to live through, mostly because of the work that you do. You also worked, as I understand it, right? You also work as a fireman or in the fire department.
In my afternoons, I did volunteer, or once I got off
Volunteer, yeah.
service during the day, it was volunteer on the fire departments, two different fire departments, depending on where I lived. And it did pretty good. I enjoyed helping out. Sometimes it was like I get off military and all of a sudden receive a call and go make a firefighter call, sometimes en route home. And even sometimes I've left, depending on how the day was going. If there was a bad call, most of the time the unit would know, okay. And sometimes like some of them are frown on it. Some said, "Oh no, that's just you're doing the same duty, but here in the States." It's just kind of how we looked at it, and it just went from there. I just felt that gave me the opportunity to help here in the States what I was trying to do overseas.
Yeah.
So,
It kind of gives you that kind of like transition and all. And I mean, I'm assuming it's hard to kind of like switch that flip that switch, I should say, I'm sorry, on and off, when you're going from a mentality of serving and protecting to now all of a sudden just, you know, having a civilian life, wondering what's next, after you serve so many years, protecting the community. So that probably was, I'm assuming, a good transition for you, being a voluntary fireman and helping out. We've talked a little bit about how in both in as a volunteer fireman, I'm sorry, and military service, there's the times where you achieve what you wanted to, and sometimes you have to deal with what could be perceived maybe as a failure, or not being able to accomplish maybe what you would have wanted, and how you dealt with it. How do you? I know you said about a lot of interesting things about it. And I wanted to go back on it because I think it's a lot very important, and about being yourself and being the best that you can. How did you approach that? How do you approach the times where you felt like, man, I wanted to do this, but I came up short, or I didn't get to complete this, or felt like maybe there was something left on the table.
uh, where we talked about saving lives, there's a thing that we got to understand. Unless you're a doctor, even a doctor can understand that they did everything they could to save the life. And up to that point, they cannot fault themselves for doing the best they could. On the kayaking side, it's the same.
Yeah.
The best thing is like any sports, and I instruct shooting sports with kids. And when one scores the best that they ever scored and still comes up short of the win, but you tell them they did the best, they said, "But I didn't win." And you show them their score, and they're still like 10 points better than they ever did before. I said, that's all you got to achieve. Yes, you
Yeah.
might not have won, but you placed better than what you did. And that's what we got to look at as ourselves. And it's like, I can say, I fished the Bass Masters 2 weekends ago, or maybe it was last weekend. Weekends go by so fast.
Yeah. Right.
And yeah, it was the 21st. So yeah, there's been a weekend right before Thanksgiving. And I didn't catch anything the day of the tournament, but I made a choice. I could have caught probably 60 inches of smaller fish, but I figured at the time period, 60 inches was going to make it in the top 20 or top 30. Little
Hmm.
did I know it would have been very good. So I went for bigger fish. Had several hits, but didn't make it. No, I didn't feel bad. I did what I wanted to do. I've already qualified, so I was, as those saying, I was swinging for the fence.
Yeah.
But I was like Casey uh, at the bat. I think I missed every ball that came across the plate. But that's just how it goes sometimes. One time you're going to hit that home run. It might not be a grand slam. It might get you that 1 point. But another time it might be a grand slam. You just never know.
Yeah.
But you got to understand that I did my best. Uh, It didn't place me in the money or in the numbers, but okay, I was satisfied. But I see people that get so discouraged on the days they don't do good, and then they get so from that discouraged, they just become so negative about it, not realizing maybe they did do their best. Maybe the fish wasn't cooperating that day.
Hmm.
I mean, there's always different things that bring it down. Maybe I didn't use the right bait, but it's the best part about it is it's all learning. We
Yeah.
all get to learn from it. So the takeaway is knowing that you did what you could do, you learn from it. So maybe next time I can do a little bit better and to go from there. Or like me, decide to not go for the small fish and go for the big fish. And well, my big fish decided to throw me a fin every now and then and wave and just stay in the water and not hit the baits right. But I still enjoy it and get
Yeah.
out there.
That's a
So
good. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
that's good. Go ahead.
No, that I was gonna say that's a good point. I think especially when you look at the tournament, there's a game within the game, right? There's a game where you try to stay consistent and try to get to the angler of the year and give yourself a chance to win. And then there's a game where it's more like I need to hit a home run. So it's either we either going to go all in or we're either going to cash the world record bass bag or we're not going to cash anything. And that's the game of it. Like in your case, you already qualified for the Bassmaster Classic. So it's like to you, it's like, well, the next notch is to win this tournament. I already qualified, so I'm going for the fences here. And like you said, it's gonna work sometimes, and it's not gonna work. But that's something that I find interesting because it's not just catching a five bag and being the five biggest fish, or winning the tournament. There's a game within the game. There's the tournaments that you want to win, that you need to win for yourself, for your own, satisfaction, or for what you're trying to achieve. And you're not going to win every single tournament out there. Not even Russ Snyder can win every single tournament out there. Not even Jody Quinn. No one is going to win every single tournament. So there's that aspect of like, now I just need to get enough to get me to the next tournament or keep me in the hunt for Angler of the Year. And that's going to change your strategy where you're going, what baits you're going to choose and what techniques are you going to choose. Because obviously there's some techniques that are more susceptible to landing you a big fish. And then there's other techniques that are more susceptible to catching you more fish, but it's not going to be maybe that bag, that 5 limit bag that's going to win you a tournament. So that's very interesting.
I can say last year for the KBF side, I was placed ninth, tied ninth. I was one of the odd ones in the group. I never won a tournament last year on the trail side. I placed eighth, ninth, fourth, something like that. Winning the top 10, but staying consistent. And it's just something I tell people: don't worry about that one slot, that first place. That's just one slot. But if you try to push yourself to be in that top 10, you got 10 slots now that you can look forward. Yeah. Eventually, if you can stay in that top 10 on every tournament, it's going to pay off for you. Being a top 10 in an Angler of the Year, year after year after year, is great. Of course, right now I'm at 27th for KBF this year, which I dropped a little bit. But still, I don't think that's a bad running out of everybody that participates. Bass, they didn't do an Angler of the Year this year. They're looking at doing one next year. I did 4 of their tournaments out of the 5. Placed 3 of them. Last one, like I said, swung for the fence. But people got to understand, it's not always the winning.
Yep.
It's the fun. It's getting out there. Even if one of your buddies comes down from a long distance and wants to fish, and you're fishing a tournament with him, you just hope he's catching something. You hope he's getting into them, and you hope they enjoy it. And I see that a lot too. And fishing with somebody else, fishing around them, pulling off so they can try to catch a fish maybe. It makes a lot of difference. Or taking that kid, just don't fish a tournament one weekend because you promised the kid you're taking fishing. Yes, and it hurt a little bit. on the points, but to me it didn't hurt in a sense, because I got to see a 12-year or 16-year-old, 50 at the time, 14, go out there and fish and caught his personal best out of a kayak that day,
Nice.
and got pictures of him. And it made all the difference in the world. He was okay with kayak fishing, but now he's enjoying kayak fishing. But now that was 14, he's 16 and a half, and girls are coming up. That's the worst thing about it for the guys. And usually I get girls that want to fish all the way to they're about 18 to 20, and then it's up there like, okay, looking for that steady boyfriend.
Yeah.
But they always enjoy getting out there fishing. So I've had them both ways. The guys and the gals, how they want to fish and what they want to do. But I learned one thing with kids, and even with my wounded veterans. When I tell them, I says, when you get tired, tell me, because I can fish from daylight to dark and keep going, because I don't think nothing about it. There's always that. I look at it like this. There's going to be one that bites. So if you're ready to go, you tell me and give me about 5 to 10 minutes. And they said, why 5 to 10? I said, I might be working one. I might be looking at one, following my bait and planing. If I'm not, I'll reel it right up. We'll go over, load up, and go get a bite to eat. Never push your kids as a father to kids or somebody else that you take out fishing. That will ruin them real quick.
Yeah.
When they get ready to go, you load up, you go and just say, how great did you have? They just said, no, let's work it out next time. Never go past what they get tired of doing. And I was bad as when I was early doing that with my son. He'd get tired. I'd let him go over there on the bank and play so I could keep fishing. Well, the next couple of times he didn't want to go. Then I got him going again. So it made that much difference later on. And I started understanding that, don't push him. Don't push them. Doesn't matter whether it's the boy or the girl. When they get tired, call it for the day. Enjoy it. Go get something to eat, snack on, and go back to the house and talk about what they did right. Don't worry about what they did wrong unless they hooked you in the back of your back. Hook.
Yeah.
So there's make sure your kid is always walking in front of you.
Yeah.
That was a I learned too. So, but it's just how to look at it on life. You don't have to be the top. You don't have to be the grandmaster at all. You just got to be down there where you're enjoying it, where you're in the top 10 or the lower 10. Doesn't matter to me. I'm going to fish and enjoy it. I'm going to do my best. So there's some days, it's the other tournament I fished before that. I was 11:15 before I caught my first bass that Saturday. And by 11:30, I already had 5 fish and lost 2. And that much difference on how things can change for you. So I'd already been fishing since 6 o'clock that morning up to that time period, and only had one little hit. And then all of a sudden, everything changed. And in the next 2 hours, I caught 16 bass and lost 3.
Wow.
So that's just, well, I'll take that back, 19 bass and lost 3.
Wow.
So that just makes that much difference on what can happen to you throughout a day. And I've seen people quit it. The tournament ends at 2, and they're getting ready to load up at 1. And I said, I'm not coming off the water or headed to the ramp till 2. Because at 15 minutes can make a difference. I know Russ, I've seen Jody, I've seen almost everybody right there at that last minute catch 2 or 3 fish. Or they already got that top 5 fish, and all of a sudden, bam, they get their kicker that brings them all the way up. Yeah. And it makes a difference. It makes a difference. You might not have been first, but it might have put you in second, from being 10th place to second. Don't quit till the time that clock hits that time. And you reel that line up and you say, well, I did the best I could today. There's always tomorrow, the next day. And then you go from there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've actually experienced that this year, where I was like, well, I'm skunking here, so it's like 15 minutes before it lines out. Might as well swing for the fences. Maybe I'll get the big bass. It'll cover at least the cost of the entry fee. And it just so happened that I did. I think it was like 20 and a half big bass of the day. That same mentality is like, well, I'm not gonna catch 5 fish in 15 minutes. Chances are I'm not gonna catch 5 fish in 15 minutes. So, but if I have one big fish that gives me big bass, then at least I go home with the tournament fee covered and maybe a little bit more in the pocket. So, and it worked out. It worked out just like that way. Now, the plan A was catch big 5 fish and win the tournament, but can't complain with plan B. And it's crazy because I go out in the water, and to me, I talk to guys says like, well, the good thing about kayak is like you can just load up the kayak, drive to the lake, and spend 2 hours, and then come back. And I was like, I cannot see myself spending just 2 hours on a lake. Like, there's no way I can spend just 2 hours on a lake. I'll spend 8 to 10 hours on the lake, and when I'm looking at my watch, I'm like, what is just 10 hours? Like, to me, those 10 hours went like 10 minutes. I'm not joking. It's like, how can I spend 8 hours at work and feel like I've worked 16 hours, but I can spend 10 hours at a lake and feel like I only spent 2 hours. It's just I guess how we all wired. When you're enjoying, when you're having fun, even if you're not fishing, I would say when you're not catching fish, it goes even faster because now you're like, crap, it's already time to go and I didn't catch any fish. So
Yeah, it does make a lot of difference on that. Not that time period. It's not to quit early. Never give up. Because the bite, you never know if the thing is, did I find a fish? Did I change to the right bait? Or did the fish just start hitting? Those are three questions that we honestly will never know.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can assume you found them, but maybe maybe you just started using the right color bait or moving it just right.
Yeah.
So you always wonder which way it is. I have been at times that I have come up on bass, see them laying down in the water, and they won't hit nothing, knowing that they're going to start around 11 o'clock and pull off and wait. And tell the guy, I says, all right, it's almost 11:15. They ought to start moving. And he says, well, I just saw one to swim under my kayak going to the bank. I says, all right, another 5 minutes, they'll be ready. What it was doing, the bass were laid up in about 3 foot of water. You could see them. Some of them were laying directly on the bottom, some were about a foot off the bottom. You couldn't get them to hit. Even if you pitched a wacky, anything in front of them, they just look at it and let it roll off their mouth. But once they went toward the bank and turned and faced back out again, it was on. I don't know what changed, what was on their clock or time period, but during that day, it may have been the lunar phase, feeding phase, whatever you want to call it. But they moved, and as soon as they moved up and to about 2 foot of water, it was on. And anything from 14 inches to 22 inches was hitting at that time period. So you never know. You can see them, and then you can get disheartened about it. It's like I did on one tournament a couple years back, and I kept flipping to this 19-inch bass. And I flipped at it, and I flipped at it, and I flipped at it, and I tried 3 different baits. And I said, I couldn't understand. Every time I'm flipping, he's going down, going from right to left to me. And I'm flipping ahead of him just on that outside edge every time. And couldn't understand it. So, and I kept, no, he wouldn't even move toward the bait. So I changed up the bait to a little smaller, nothing. Well, I backed off a little bit, giving him a little breathing room, waiting. And I see him coming back. And finally, he's coming left to right. I already tried him once, and I had to hit back at the bank and come off. So this time, coming left to right, I pitched up there just about the way I'd been doing it before when he was going right to left. And it was just a sonic blast. Boom, he hit the bait. I got him in, laid him on the board, and put him facing to the left, and I realized why he wasn't hitting anything on the left side. He was blind. He was blind in the left eye. And he wasn't turning toward any of the vibration, though. He was just staying watching that bank with that right eye. So that made sense to me why when he swam back right, I didn't get a chance to cast him because he was running fast going right. So he could get back up to where he started and and he would do his turnaround and come back down the bank real slow, and he was watching the bank with that right eye. But I didn't realize that because all I saw was a bass in the water swimming about 2 foot off the bank. But as you think about it, after I got him in and saw that he was blind in the left eye, he was doing what he could, being blind in one eye, and how he was watching the bank, that he had learned that he could see with that right eye. He could watch that bank swimming left to right, right to left, and catch the bait fish coming off of it. But I was casting ahead of him and moving the bait in front of him. So by the time it got to where he could see the bait, he couldn't see it anymore because it was already past his nose where his left eye was supposed to be seeing it, which I didn't understand that at the time period. Didn't know he had a bad eye. So you never know.
Yeah, I think a lot of it we underestimate information. We don't value sometimes information as well as we should when we catch a fish, because you got to think. I mean, in order to get better, we sometimes go, "Oh, he just like takes bait." Well, yeah, that could be part of it, but it also is, there's a lot of different things that you can take mental notes from. Like, how was I working the bait? Was I more like, pausing it or moving it faster? What color did I use? I've had it occasions where I'm just like, slow day out there. I'm not catching anything. Suddenly, I get a text from my wife, or I get an email that I was expecting. Just as I'm laying, as I'm casting, and I just forget about my bait and start, checking my notifications on my phone, either replying or reading the information that I was expecting to get, whatever. And all of a sudden, boom, I get a line hit. That makes me realize, okay, I'm moving the bait too fast. Because while I was, working the bait, I wasn't getting hit. But as soon as I distract myself and forget that I have a bait on the water and start checking my phone, I get a bite. So it's just mental notes that you have to take, not only with the color of the bait, the technique, but there's a lot of information that you can get, taking mental notes of how I work, and that's a perfect example. Recently I've gotten into, and I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but I want to hit on that point, because recently I started using the jackhammer, the heavy one, the 1 1/4 ounce, working on deep ledges. And what I've learned from it is, the black and blue. I started using that one. It worked best with um, uh, a trailer that doesn't have that much action versus lighter jackhammer that I would use with a trailer that has more action. What I've learned from it, I broke my personal best on it, is that specific day they wanted something that was, you know, wasn't moving as much. It wasn't making that more noise or attracting that much. They wanted that slow moving bait with less action. And the jackhammer at that point was, noisy enough and vibrating enough to pounce on it while I was working it slow. But the trailer on it made, to me, from what I got, to make the huge difference, because it was one of those trailers where it really didn't have a lot of movement. So it's just little things that you can take away every time you catch a fish. Just take mental notes, and even you can write them down or put them on your phone. With technology now, of what bait you use, how do you work it, um, what color, what depth, what's the water temperature. There's a whole lot of information that if you take notes on it, it'll eventually form a bigger picture of what might work at that specific lake, that specific time, that specific day.
Yes, it does. It makes a lot of difference. I mean, most people understand I love frog fishing. That's what I like doing. But you got to get away from what you feel comfortable with, be it frog fishing, wacky fishing, uh, chatterbait fishing, and be able to change up and look at what you have to do and what you got to work with. And three base frog colors, I say, is a black, white, and a yellow belly. And if you're power fishing, that's all you need. Be
Hmm.
it a hollow body or a paddle tail frog, that's your three base colors you'll need. But then people say, well, what about all these other colors? Well, if you start finessing a frog, then the other colors make a difference. Your sides. And you think a bass won't necessarily see the top, but somehow or another they may catch a glimpse of that top, or it could be how the sun reflects off the top. But
Hmm.
that side. And I've had them come up and just ready, or just ball right up to the frog, or even another top water bait, and you think they're fishing to hit, and all of a sudden just stop, and they just look at it, and then and I've seen them just turn and swim away. And you try to get them to hit it as power fishing, they won't touch it. But you were doing it real hard, real aggressive, so they come charging up to take it, and then they look at it and say, "Oh, that's not what I thought it was," and they'll turn away and swim away. So sometimes the color does make a difference.
Yeah.
Could be that they were counting the stripes on it instead of 3 stripes. They were looking for a 4-stripe frog. I'm more like, well, maybe that was it. Maybe it was 15 polka dots and still 3. You know what was in their mind, but they know enough to say, that's not the one I was wanting. No, that's not what I had flavor for today. And it could have been that they were just a hue change. Just they were wanting a yellow instead of a gold, and they could see that, and they're that close together. Or a white with a yellow stripe down the side. Just, you never know. It's just like using some people use a chatterbait and they have one that's all white, and then all of a sudden they stop hitting them, but his buddy's over there catching the mess out of them with a white one because it's got a blue stripe or a gray back.
Yeah.
Real subtle, but still it was enough that they kept hitting it, but they wouldn't hit the other one now. And it's like the blue and black, or blue and purple, fishing them deep. People say they don't see, but why will they hit one and not the other?
Yeah.
There's enough difference there that they're seeing it. But a story I like saying, and I've told a lot of people about it, when I was fishing a 12-foot aluminum boat before I started the kayak, I have had a fishing partner in the back. We're fishing an old slough, same waters, always like fishing the backwaters. We both had black buzz baits on, and probably identical buzz baits. And I'd already caught like 4 or 5 bass, averaging about 2 pounds apiece. I was having a ball. And we probably hadn't even gone 10 feet. And he was trying so hard to catch one. He hadn't caught one yet. And he backlashes. Well, I take my rod and hand it to him. And I take his and I work his backlash out. So now he starts casting with my rod, my bait, my line. I finish about 2 or 3 minutes. I get his backlash out, pitch it out there, reel it up, get it all tight, straight, ready for him to go. No hits, no nothing. I said, well, maybe I caught only 4 fish here, or 5 fish, whatever I caught here. I hand his rod back to him, grab my rod, my first cast, right where he'd been casting, the whole time, reel it up, bam, a 3-pounder on. Nothing on the next cast, another one, next cast, 1.5 pounds. He said it was time to go to the house. Hit that same spot for 2 to 3 minutes. How many casts can you make in 2 or 3 minutes? A lot.
Yeah.
Considering you only casting maybe 20 yards out because of the trees. But he could not, using my rod, my bait, my line, everything exact. But there was something we were doing different. Either the turn of the reel, either the jerk, or the level I was holding my rod. That was all something that changes up how the bait runs. And he was not getting the hits, but I was getting the hits. So that's just a thing to look at. You don't know if so you can't say it was the speed of the reel as for the reel itself, but it could have been the speed of the reel due to how I was making my turn handle. So, and I fished right next to somebody in the same boat, jigging for crappie, and they're constantly pulling them in. And I'm up there with the exact same setup, same color, everything. And I'm doing the same thing, same depth. And every now and then I catch a white bass. Like, come on, can I not catch a crappie? And he's and I'm like, I look at him like, I don't understand it. And we don't. I mean, you never know. Maybe those saying I'm not holding my mouth right, or the pucker factor wasn't right, or we just don't know. It's just, but you got to, like you said, look for that little minute detail that it's going to be to change up the. And I know several guys that take the paddle tail on their chatterbaits that cut the paddle off.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't give that extra vibration, but it gives it more. As the chatterbait moves, you still got a good wake with it because it fills up the body there by the hook. It gives it some mass, and that makes a lot of difference too. So I don't know. We all don't know, but We don't know it all, but we
Only,
enjoy trying.
only the fish know, right? And it's sometimes we overthink, and it's just it's one of those things where they, particularly lake, they might behave differently. Particular day, they're gonna behave differently. It's like there's no one single technique or bait or trailer that's gonna make guarantee you that's gonna catch you fish. If it was, we only be using that bait, and it'll probably cost like $100 to buy. So it's and I think I was talking to somebody the other day that I was fishing with. We were talking about the jackhammer and how successful it is, and I think a lot of it comes to the fact. Well, it's a relatively the invention of the chatterbait is not new, but the jackhammer, it's relatively new, and it's gone mainstream now this year or the last couple of years, where it's more like social media content creators like Fluke Master have talked about it, and now it's getting more popularity. So in a lot of lakes, it feel like the fish have never seen they've seen chatterbait, but this one may have a jackhammer's got a different vibration to it, a different style of movement. So the fish have not ingrained that into their DNA to recognize, oh, this is this is not the chatterbait. So they
Yeah,
may be susceptible to go for it because they have never seen it or seen very few of it out on the water. Just that vibration, it'll probably come to a point when it's getting so popular that it's going to go through this cycle where now fish have kind of like so used to it that they're going to stop biting on it, and then something else is going to come along that's going to work even better. So it's a lot of different things. I firmly believe that fish do develop an instinct to say, okay, I'm not hitting this anymore because the last 3 times I've hit this bait, it hasn't worked out well for me.
that could be
So it's
that could be
interesting.
to that bass running up and looking at that frog and all of a sudden
Yeah,
saying, "No, that's not the right color," or that
yeah,
top water bait, "Oh, that's not the right color,"
yeah,
or the right something's not right, or
yeah,
"Oh, I remember that thing from last week," and that was not a good thing getting in that kayak having my picture taken. I don't want that again.
yeah.
So
It's interesting. Someday we'll figure it out. Some, Someday we'll be able to communicate with Bass and find out exactly what it is.
it's still fun either way.
So, Mr. Case, what are your plans now for 2021? I know 2020 was a crapshoot for a lot of us, especially when we're talking about kayak fishing. Any events other than the Bassmaster Lead? Any or Bassmaster Classic, I should say. Any other events you got circled on your calendar that you're looking forward, that you feel like you either could take the W there, or that you just want to visit that lake maybe because you never fished it before?
Uh, I could probably come close on the Invitational. I mean, I had a chance at it last year and pulled off of it because I didn't want to lose my spot and my fishing and the fish during the 10. I knew if I fished it 4 days in a row hard,
Mm,
it wouldn't be there. So I pulled off on my second day of the Invitational and did not fish it. Some people say, "Why did you leave fish?" Well, I was really hunting them for the 10, not the Invitational.
mhm.
That might be a good chance there. We got, of course, in the fall, Caddo coming up for the national championship. That's a good
Yeah,
lake. I've
yeah.
gotten, I've understood it better now, and I've had bad days on it, just like any other lake. But I think that's going to be a good time for me back in the fall there. So there's at least four, maybe I say four, to be 3 weekends, maybe 4 weekends with the KBL. I know the classic is on Lake Lewiston or Louisville. They're just at Fort Worth.
Oh, is it Louisville? I thought it was Towa. I can never pronounce it. I thought it was going to be Towakani or something like that. I
Oh
think it's
no!
Towakani. Well, it's like Louisville. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, that's a tough lake.
Yeah, I'm surprised in doing it Louisville. Like
Well, I,
great,
I realized
great.
how tough all the Texas boys started saying, "We did a tournament there and only caught one fish." I'm going,
Yeah, yeah.
boy, but that's what they decided. So we'll just see if I can catch that one fish. Nobody else catches one. That's what I got to look at.
Wow.
But
Good for Louisville.
I got a few local tournaments to fish, and that's what I try to do is fish with my local groups. I got two in the state and one in Louisiana that I fish with, or we're two in Louisiana, two in Mississippi. And I may not fish every one. I don't worry about making a run for the angler of the year with them. It's just getting out, having some fun and some camaraderie with your buddies that's fishing those groups. And then, so I'm still waiting on, like I said, waiting on bass to release, and then seeing how it goes from there. Once they release, I'll get on my, what I call, last year was the green calendar. So all my dates that I had highlighted green were the ones I'm fishing, and that's usually what I start with. So pretty much I've chosen 3 main weekends with KBF other than the championship, and that's one's closest to me, which I think one is Texas, then the Florida, and then Wheeler, Pickwick, and stuff. I think that's it at this time period. I may have one other one, I don't know. I just play it around, and it's fun. I mean, I've been all the way up to Pennsylvania, representing across to Wisconsin, out to Oklahoma, and all the way down to Florida. So it's always fun seeing what else I can do. I can always branch out and just try a little bit different location too. I fished a lot of different states, so in the years of kayak fishing, and that's one thing that we can get up there used to a lot. You see it a lot on posts. Is people would say, "I'm coming to Indiana. Who's up here? Who's KBF member up here? Do you have an extra kayak? I'd like to try to fish this weekend while I'm up there." And usually somebody will message you and say, "I got an extra kayak. We can go try these little lakes." I don't see it as much now. People doing that, but used to, you see it a lot. And it's just how we had grown as a community. It's more people fishing, but I think we lost sight of that, of being able to call out a fellow member to see if he can help take me fishing because he's coming into the state like we used to. There's still a few to do it. Say, "I'm coming down. You want to go fishing?" As long as I know ahead of time, it's always there. I got plenty of kayaks. We can make something do, even if it's those saying we're fishing but not catching. But still, it's fun floating around and talking and reviewing what tactics you're using.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is as the sport grows and money becomes more of a, people think, oh, I can actually make money out of this. Whereas what used to be just for fun, even on tournaments, you just going out there, maybe bragging rights, or just kind of measuring stick to see how you, stack up to other anglers. Now I think with more money coming in, I think, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's great that the sport has grown, and it'll hopefully keep growing where more people can actually make a living out of it. And if that's what it is, that's great. But obviously, with money comes other agendas, and I'm not here to judge anybody for what they're trying to achieve. But money changes everything. That's all I gotta say about it. It makes a difference for whatever reason, for better or worse. They get more competition, more rivalries. We've seen it in the glitter boat world. And if the sport of kayak fishing keeps growing, we'll eventually see it, if we haven't already, in kayak fishing. And it is what it is. It's important that each of us stay, true to ourselves. The sport can grow, money can come in, but just stick to what the grassroots of kayak fishing is, and that's the camaraderie. Going out there, enjoying nature, enjoying relaxing time on the water, without having to spend too much money on gasoline, a boat, insurance, and everything that comes, and maintenance. So it's important that we all try to remember the grassroots of the sport, however popular it gets out there. Last year you took part in the Five Live. I hear rumors that Scott is bringing Five Live back, and he's revamping it, and it's going to be bigger and better. Hopefully it will. Scott Beecher, we know he's how do you call that? He's going to go all in.
Oh yeah,
And he's not gonna accept failure. He's gonna want to hit for the fences on this, and we're looking forward to Five Live. Do you plan on taking part in Five Live if you get the invite or however he structures this year?
We've talked several different times. He's looking at the plan is 2 cameras that they've already purchased and finishing up purchasing. One to be over your shoulder and one to be facing you, so that way you have a picture, and he will adjust it back and forth as needed, and through the 5 or 6 or 7 anglers. Now understand, the 5 live is not the number of anglers, even though it was 5. It's us catching 5 fish live.
Yeah.
And some people thought that was odd when we come up and have an extra person or something.
Yeah.
He's looking at bringing back a few of us, and it may have been the winners, it may have been some of the top. He's still playing that all around and trying to figure out who. But we both talked about, and he's mentioned that he's got to bring in new faces also, give other people a chance to be there and be seen. And he's looking at the ones that want to make the sport grow, and it's going to make it that people want to see and understand what's going on and how we talk about it as we're fishing these tournaments, not just necessarily just to fish the tournaments, but to enjoy it and show what you're doing as you're fishing. Maybe even talk about it as you're tying on a new bait, so that they're filming and saying, well, he's tying this on, and you explain what you're doing before you make your cast. So it's to help you out and also bring the kayak fishing world a different angle on what is going on, or how we are being seen and portrayed now.
Yeah. Taking it more mainstream.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I've talked to other anglers off air, what their feelings were Five Live. I'm personally a huge fan of Five Live. And there's 2 sides of it. There's the side that you're a fan, as a fan, how do you see the sport? In order for the sport to grow, and I think Scott Butcher understands this, obviously, is that we can't just limit about fishing. There's in order for the sport to take another level, there has to be a popularity. Social media now pretty much runs a lot of the marketing now. Where it used to be where you had if you wanted something to grow, as far as the sport, it has to be on a major network. Where now it's not really like that. You see so many kids now, they actually make money out of doing YouTube videos. And that's a little bit different when it comes to tournament angler, because editing content, putting great content out there for videos, it takes time and effort. First of all, you have to catch fish, and then you have to either pay somebody to edit the videos or do it yourself, and that takes time. Plus, you also have to get better at fishing, which takes time as well. So there is a balance out there. It's not like people think like, oh, you're out there fishing. Well, no, there's a lot of stuff that goes on it, whether you're a content creator or a tournament angler, in order for you to grow in the sport and put your name out there. In order for sponsors to get involved, I'm not going to say they don't care about the results, but they're more focused on like, what is your reach? You could be the best angler winning all the tournaments, but if you don't have a social media account and you're not active in it, well, the sponsor is going to say, great, a few people saw you win a tournament, but this angler who's not necessarily winning all the tournaments, but posting a lot on social media is getting our product to a wider audience. And there's that balance. I understand that I've talked to some anglers who are like, well, the integrity of the sport has to be winning. And I get that. I completely agree with that. At the end of the day, winning does matter. And it does. And whoever wins should get the lion's share of the glory. But in order for the sport to grow, and Scott Butcher is working on that side of it, and I think he's doing an admirable job of it, and I'm a fan of it, is that he's doing like, well, we also have to look at the social media aspect, the growth of it, and anglers that are putting themselves out there in social media, can benefit, the sport can benefit from their exposure out there. So it's a balance, and I'm sure there's going to be people that are in favor of it, people that are against it. But there's always a balance that needs to be reached in order for the sport to grow. So we'll see where it goes. And my full support on Scott and Five Live and every single tournament out there, whether it's KBBT or Hobie or Bass or KBF, and even Paddle and Fin is doing their own tour this year, trail this year. We want the sport to grow. Whoever it is, the more the sports grow, the better it is for everybody. Well,
Understanding where the Five Lights started and on it, Scott called me like a month before and said, "Well, what do you think?" And I thought this would be great. I was kind of disappointed I wasn't in the first group, but was on down in the line on one of the other groups. He said, "Well, I need to spread everybody out." I said, "That's fine. I'm good with that." But considering what he did for the first year to start, getting 25 people out there to go and to fish a tournament, and how good it was to get us to fish that, and catching 5 fish in a 2-hour period.
That was amazing.
That's not as easy as it sounds. And it's like, and I can say, but that was on a morning bite. It's like I was fishing against Jamie Dennison on that tournament. He didn't catch anything during that 2 hours. 30 minutes later, in less than an hour, he had 5 fish. That's back to you never know when they're going to hit.
Mm-hmm.
It was just that much of a change in that much time period. 30 minutes or so later, he tore them up. So that's another thing Scott was looking at, is maybe doing 4-hour periods, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. So you have a different bite period. Somebody may have a morning bite, somebody may have an afternoon bite. That's things he's thinking about doing and trying to get more people active in it. So, and then with KBT, it was funny. I fished their tournaments, and I knew I didn't have the luxury of having. And that's another thing. Let me back up just a second with Scott. Scott, we had to use our cell phones, so we couldn't necessarily choose the best lake that we liked. Mm-hmm. We had to choose a lake that had cell service all the time, and that made a lot of difference too, because there was other lakes that some of us could have gone to and probably got 5 fish and could have probably broke 90 to 100 inches, but we never would have had the cell service. He needed the cell service for us to be able to do the 5 live, and that was part of the reason how a lot of us chose our locations, by having cell service that was not going to be intermittent or cut or non-existence at all. It had to be cell service 100%. And that was one thing looking at. And that's another thing he's having to look at for this next year as it comes up. And that's all getting played into it. And the cost is coming up on it.
Yeah.
So considering, it's just great. I mean, the people that fished it, they were all good fishermen. It wasn't necessarily that I won one time, Jason Orr won one time. All the different people won at different times. It was different times. You could have swapped it all back around, or do the same. I could be in the same 5, fishing the same time period this coming year, and I might not get to fish. It could be Tim Perkins gets all the fish, or it could be Jamie gets all the fish. You just never know what's going to go on out of that group. It's always amazing on how it goes, how it changes up.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I think talking about the cell signal, so you do the video stream, like when you look at it, the lakes are gonna have, especially where I live, the lakes there are gonna have allow me to do video streaming, live video streaming. It's gonna be lakes that are around the Metroplex, great lakes. But the big bass factories are going to be the lakes that are out there, out of the city limits, like maybe in the middle of nowhere, because those lakes, first of all, they're healthier than a lake in the city. I don't care how clean the city is. There's going to be more rain, runoff, pollution going into lakes. It's going to affect the health of the lake. They're going to be high pressure, because that's where all the weekend warriors go, and people take their kids, where you go out of the lake in the middle of 2 hours away from the Metroplex, where only like diehard fishermen go fish. There's not that populated. You get more big fish. That's my experience, at least. Not to say that I can't have a great day on a lake at the Metroplex, but traditionally, where I'm going to catch my biggest bags is going to come in the lake that's outside the Metroplex. And guess what? Those lakes are not going to have cell signal, not a consistent good video streaming signal. That's a good point.
And we talk about it. I got the Bass Times here. I just got in the mail. And referencing Bassmaster, I think it was 2 years ago, I was on their poster lead holding up my big bass for the year before. Then this past year, I mean, that's just one kayaker right there, not doing it, showing up on their big page board for their classic coming up, me showing up holding my big bass in my hand. We got this past year, in the past 3 months, Casey Reed had a write up in the Bass Magazine, Bass Times, and last month Russ Snyder had one. I know it was because of Russ winning out there in California, but it still was. That's two kayakers that's had write-ups about them in a major magazine, and not just pictures like me, but write-ups about them and what they were doing and how they were doing stuff. So it's come a long way. I mean, but we still got a little bit farther to go, and so it's being seen.
Yeah.
Now we got KBF, Hobie, and Bass, 3 different type tournaments on the levels they're wanting to look at. Then you have KBBT, a bracket type tournament, and I think they're wanting to come out with a series, kind of like a football, baseball team, with a group of 6, 7 guys move around. They fish different spots, and only 5 fish out of your team, or 4 fish. That's all still worked out. But the bracket tournament is fun in a sense that you fish against somebody else every weekend until the final. And yeah, you might not make it to the first, but you fish against a lot of good people coming up, and you learn a lot.
Yeah.
And you learn that sometimes it's best to go down there and fish in their own waters and fish against them there.
No.
But
and it's great for those people, families that maybe can't afford, or don't have the time to drive 5 hours to their nearest big name tournament, but can take a one day out of a month, and then go for one-on-one tournament and move from there.
yes.
Well, Brad, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I always tell people, look for your local tournaments, fish a couple of them to see if that's really what you want to do, or if you just want to kayak fish. If you want to fish tournaments, try your locals and see how you do. It's $25 to $50 a weekend on what you do, and you enjoy it. If you don't, then okay, not to try to put the extra money in to start on the big side. KBF will still have the challenges next year. That's your month longs now again. So, and then you to choose out of that 30-something days, what day is best for you. And a lot of times we had people that work offshore that may not have but a weekend between those time periods. Now they may have 2 weeks to be able to fish.
Yeah.
Or people that work weekends and didn't have a weekend off. They only get 1 weekend a month to fish because that's their rotation, and it always fall on an off weekend. Now they got that chance again, 30 days. They can see what they can do, or they find that one tournament to fish. If you can't find anybody, do what we always used to do. Friday night, get 5 or 6 guys to go with you, and y'all just throw $5 in the pot, winner take all. Or you get out there and you fish, and winner goes by the evening meal after you get through fishing. Something like that. Fun. Bragging rights amongst your buddies. That's all it takes, a little bit, just to get started and all. So don't think you can't fish because you're in a Pelican Castaway 110 or something of that sort. It starts somewhere, even if it's an inflatable kayak, and I've seen a few out there.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do that, not the way I set the hook. So I figured that'll be the first thing that blows. Over the lake, and all of a sudden realize that my life jacket better be blowing up while this one's deflating right here.
Yeah, you don't want to find out the hard way.
No. I have hit the side of my kayak with my bait so hard at times, I've even had it stick into the side of the kayak.
I've seen that happen a couple of times. Or fly right back at you and duck at the last millisecond to avoid to go to a doctor for surgery.
Yeah. Safety, we talked about that and all that. I want to reiterate one thing I hadn't done before on safety. It's not getting back in the kayak. We've all talked about that at times. It's glasses, sunglasses.
Yeah.
You think about, as we just mentioned, a hook flying by you, and you got glasses on, it hits you in the face. Well, maybe you get the hook in your eye, or you won't get the hook in your eye because you got glasses on. Well, that's not what I'm wanting to get toward. It's the mist from your reels when you make a cast. Most people during the day is fine because we put sunglasses on and we see that mist coming into us. But in the early mornings, you make a cast and that mist is getting to your eye. If you start thinking about it, that's bacteria now getting into your eye from a mist. So it's even best if you had some sort of clear glasses on.
Yep.
Watch that mist. I found out, and a couple of my other buddies have found out, we have eye infections after a tournament within a day or two, and then we realize as that mist is hitting us because we don't have sunglasses on, and we started narrowing it down to why do I have an eye infection? And it turns out that water misting coming off that reel, and it sprays into your face and into your eyes, and the next thing you know, you have something like pink eye or something else in the eye.
Yeah.
So guys, just take that in consideration for safety. I mean, it still helps from that hook flying back at you, but it's just something about the mist from the reel infecting your eye for your eyesight, and you won't be able to fish for 3 or 4 days, or even worse, you may end up losing the eye because you got really something bad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Also, when you catch fish, sometimes you like next thing you know, you're scratching your eye and then you realize that's one thing. I always have like a little antibacterial bottle every time I catch a fish or something. I try to like wipe my hands out of it, clean them before, because you never know. And then you all of a sudden you're scratching your nose, scratching your eyes, and there you go. You got an infection because of it. So, or you start eating your lunch, dipping into your Fritos or your Doritos with all this fish slime on you, and you forget.
I was thinking about that. I mean, I'll reach into the pond and wash my hands, reach to grab my sandwich afterwards. I'm not
Yeah.
bad about that. But I do remember one time catching a gar and taking my towel and wrapping it around the gar so I could get the hook out of its mouth. And later on that day, our sweat was just boiling down on my face so bad, and I reached for that towel and I started to wipe my face.
Oh man.
Face. Then I realized, oh, that's where all that slime went.
Yeah.
So I had to find another towel, but because I had enough gar slime on my face to coat another gar with no problem. So if you ever do use it to hold a fish, make sure you don't put it back and use it the same way you intended to use it from the start. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
You forget about it at times. So,
Well, Mr. Case, thank you so much for taking time of over more than an hour here talking to you. So I appreciate you taking the time to be on my podcast. It's an honor to have you on my podcast. I'm a huge admirer of what you do in the kayak fishing tournament scene and for the community. So can't thank you enough. All that you do in elevating our sport to the next level. We wish you the best for next year. And as far as tournament and life in general, hopefully it's going to be a better year for all of us than 2020 has been. And things going to be on the up and up. But before I let you go, Mr. Case, I don't know if there's any sponsors you want to thank, or family members or friends that make your kayak fishing life a lot simpler. If you want to take a few minutes to thank those people, go ahead.
well, I'm with Native Kayaks right now and Big Adventures. That's where I'm using the Native Titan 13.5. I have the Dakota batteries, the Tornado motor, and I love that motor, the 1103. Spro frogs, can't fish without my spros, and their crankbaits also, which has helped me out on several tournaments too. And then I have Red Line lures and their vibrating jig. That has been, like you mentioned about the chatterbait, it's the competition against them.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't necessarily have a good chatter, but I got a good click on that bait, and I love that click, and it works out fine for me. We have so many different people out there to help us and bring it along. My sponsors are always great. And my best sponsor so far has been Yak Attack. They've stayed with me, and I've been with them for almost 9 years now. And they always got good products and always replace them if something goes wrong with them.
Great company, Yak Attack.
Yeah. The good part is my kids are grown, so I got grandkids now, so I don't have to stay home and be with them, as I would suggest a lot of people have to watch. And you don't feel guilty about leaving. And it's always get up in the morning, and the wife says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm debating on going fish." She says, "That's loaded. Go. Bye." So I like hearing that sometimes. And other times is, "When will you be back?" I'm like, I said, "Why? Just want to know we got supper ready for you, and yard work for you to do." And we're like, yeah, yard work. But just remember, guys, it's all about being out there, enjoying it, and keeping your line wet.
Can't express it any better than that. So, Mr. Case, thank you so much. For those out there listening, this has been the Bass, Kayak, and Beer segment. As always, presented you by Douglas Rods. Go to douglasoutdoors.com to check the full lineup. So, again, we wish everybody the best this coming year. We're pretty much ending 2020. Hopefully, 2021 is going to be a better year for everyone. Be out there. If you're going to be out there in the water, be safe, especially if you're fishing in winter. Please take the appropriate necessary measures to make sure that you are safe and protect yourself from, if you eventually fall in the water, don't have to worry about hypothermia and everything. So I know that's different in every region, whether you're in the south, north, but please take good care of yourselves out there. Take the necessary precautions and be safe. So tight lines for you all. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle_and_fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle_and_fin@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in Northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. TRC Covers, protect your investment. Catch Products, shout out to Catch Products. Go to catchproducts.com and put the Paddle and Fin logo directly on your catch board. Shout out to Jig Masters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com, use promo code PNF20 and save 20% on all your jig and tackle needs.